God of War has a beautiful orchestrated soundtrack that seems more like it comes from a Philharmonic orchestra, and the soundtrack is headed up by 6 people nonetheless. Some of those musicians are Gerard K. Marino, Winifred Phillips, Mike Reagan, and Ron Fish, to name a few. However, I'm not sure if Ron Fish is the exact same guy who helped Nick Arundel with the Batman Arkham Asylum soundtrack, or if it is a different person. Anyway, some of the stellar tracks are fighting the Harpies and Minotaurs on the rooftops of Athens and the battle against the Hydra leader in the beginning. It just leaves me breathless when I hear how powerful the orchestra is in the tunes. The sound effects are really good, and they are that of Foley sounds that give clear representation as to what they are used for. As for the voice acting, I rocketed through the roof when I heard how good Kratos sounded with his voice actor. Terrence C. Carson grasps himself into the character where he is Kratos as much as George Newbern is Sephiroth from Final Fantasy VII and David Hayter is Snake in the Metal Gear Solid games. The vengeful and enraged spirit that Carson delivers within Kratos just makes my skin crawl as he sounds like one tough cookie that no one should mess around with. Aside from Carson, Stephen J. Bloom from popular video game and anime fame lends his talents in playing the voice of the God of War, Ares. I would expect no less when I listen to the sheer awesomeness in Stephen Bloom's voice talents, since he had great voices like Jack Kamen in Mad World, which was developed by Platinum Games. In an overall viewpoint, the sounds within the music, sound effects, and the voice acting just blew my mind, and it makes me give the game a big score just for that.
From all of us.
There's one quick note I would like to address in this section. I'm going to be covering the development history of this game and the next 2 games within this marathon. I will cover a brief development history on God of War 3, and I will give a retrospective of the games that came out for that franchise. Anyway, the development and history of God of War began in 2002, and the idea was brought up by David Jaffe for wanting to try something different than just making another new Twisted Metal game. He wanted to make a game that took everything that we like about the action, adventure, and puzzle-solving genres, combining them into one game, and taking the original concept to a whole new level. Ironically, it was something that he wished for when he took on video game development in the first place. When Mr. Jaffe took on the lead as the game's director and lead game designer, he would be pushing it to the limit with himself and his co-workers into making a near-perfect masterpiece. There was so much frustration and anger within the development process that David Jaffe wanted to ensure it became the product that he always wished for. The character design for Kratos was done about 50 times before it became what Jaffe wanted it to be. The combat was revamped so much to aim to where Kratos really gets mad and rips his enemies to shreds, and the pressure was put on for trying to complete the game before its release in early months of 2005. After all, the final product of God of War was a well-worth and hard-worked title that won numerous awards and became a pinnacle for Sony's gaming brand. The series has many other games that plays along in the story's canon, and they are enough to hype up the final entry in the series this March. If you want more information on the development history, be sure to unlock the behind-the-scenes video that documents the development process of the game. God of War is a near-perfect masterpiece, but nothing about the game comes as close to perfect in any way. Therefore, here are my complaints. My first problem with the game is the ridiculous AI with the enemies. This especially goes for the challenges of the Gods mode when you go through the 10 stages to try to earn that extra trophy for completing it as a whole. Most of the enemies in the upper stages are very cheap, and it even shows you that normal mode is not an easy cakewalk than anything else. There were times when I would just yank my hair because of the amount of damage that is inflicted on you from your foes. I always kept dying when fighting with Ares, and it hardly made the higher difficulties any more fun to play. My other complaint would be the fact that the QuickTime events will not work all the time. This is mainly because of the game's focus as an HD re-release, so the picture will look disoriented and the execution of the buttons during the QuickTime sequences always seem to be one step ahead of you and not make you act quick enough. It's really aggravating, and it's hard to do when you have a DVD recorder with no HD support from component cables. My last complaint that I have about the game is the fact that I feel that the action and the combat feel somewhat flat and somewhat dull. My reason is that this is the first American-developed game to seem to get close to the stylish action like Devil May Cry, but since I played the recently released Bayonetta, it falls one step behind from Hideki Kamiya's creative game design in the stylish action. It was really cool at first, but Bayonetta just exceeds it a bit. Other than that, there isn't that much else left that I find wrong with this game. As a champion of the gods, you would expect to be rewarded with great quality. And how right you are! God of War offers a ton of great values that makes the game a platinum hit. First of all, the character growth was a great need for the game's progression. The music was pure genius, the sound effects were delightful, the voice acting was solid, and the story was really well written for a game that takes place in a time when many other developers took that initiative with other games. However, this game is more about one character and some of those that are involved in the plot, and that is what I like about a game's story like the Resident Evil games. It has to have a set cast of characters that need to have a purpose in the story, and it can make people like their characters in all their glory. Kratos is one of the highly acclaimed icons to Sony's gaming brand, along with the Sackboy in Little Big Planet, and he ranks as one of my top 10 favorite video game protagonists of all time. Another great merit would be the game's design. The graphics and art direction just blew me to the sky with the amount of realism and fantasy put together in this action game. Kratos looks really good from the start of 2005, and he continues to look even better with every new entry that comes out. The blood and gore was top-notch, and that was not a problem as it easily explains the gruesome times of ancient Greece, and the environments were truly amazing. At last, the gameplay and controls were very solid for this title, and it was a great leap from what most people enjoy about the action, adventure, and puzzle game genres, and completely giving them a whole new meaning. The controls are as perfect as those from Super Castlevania 4, and your control over Kratos made you feel like you were unleashing your wrath on those who stand in your way. It's more like a nostalgic feeling of the beat-em-ups from yesteryear. It's pure classic gameplay coming back to fit in nicely for this generation. As far as this franchise has existed, God of War will continue to please hardcore and younger gamers out there with its tremendous gameplay, controls, and replay value. Since you get this game along with God of War 2 for the price of one on the PS3, you are really in for your money's worth. God of War still stands the test of time as one of Sony's biggest gaming properties, and it is their answer to Nintendo's Mario and Zelda games and to Microsoft's Halo and Gears of War franchises. The story and action blend in so well that your vengeance and wanting to bring down Ares will make it a truly satisfying experience for the many times you play it up to this day. In all honesty, I still say that Bayonetta exceeds the action in God of War, but this game is still a really fun title for the mature audience. For either the PS2 or PS3, it is a game that you do not want to miss. I am proud to give the first God of War game an 8 out of 10. The first God of War game is a really fun game, and it was a really big mouthful to talk about. Now that we got the first game out of the way, check back in for part 2 as we take a look at the sequel, God of War 2, in the God of War collection on PS3.